There are two ways to steal $3 billion in Bitcoin. The hard way is to hack the encryption. You spend 10 years trying to crack a SHA-256 algorithm that is mathematically unbreakable. The easy way is to own the keys, steal the money yourself, and then blame the guy sitting in the basement guarding the empty safe. My name is Kade. For 5 years, I was the custodian of the cold storage vault for IronGate Exchange. I sat in a copper-lined Faraday cage 60 feet underground, guarding the offline hard drives that held the life savings of 2 million customers. But yesterday, the FBI raided my apartment. They found the hard drives under my mattress, planted. They found a $5 million wire transfer in my name, fabricated. And on the news, my boss, CEO Adrian Stoll, is telling the world that I am the rogue employee who stole everything. Adrian thinks he has committed the perfect crime. He thinks that because I am in a federal holding cell, I am powerless. But Adrian forgot the first rule of engineering: always build a backdoor. He doesn't know about the Bloodhound, a dormant script I buried deep in the exchange's kernel. It is a dead man's switch. If I don't verify my identity biometrically every 72 hours, the system assumes I have been silenced. It doesn't delete the data. It wakes up. In exactly 3 days, my code is going to hunt down the missing money on the public blockchain, link it to Adrian's real-world assets, and broadcast the proof to every node on the planet. I'm the only one who can stop it. And I'm not going to say a word. The Faraday Cage. The most expensive room in North America is not a penthouse overlooking Central Park, nor is it the trading floor of the New York Stock Exchange. It is a windowless, concrete box buried 60 feet beneath the subbasement of a nondescript office building in Jersey City. It has no Wi-Fi. It has no cellular signal. It has no Bluetooth. It is a Faraday cage, a room wrapped in a continuous, seamless mesh of conductive copper that blocks all electromagnetic radiation. If a nuclear bomb went off in Manhattan, the EMP would fry every iPhone in the tri-state area, but the data in this room would survive. I am Kade, and I am the only person in the world who has the combination to the door. I am the custodian for IronGate Exchange, the fourth largest cryptocurrency platform on the planet. I don't trade. I don't look at charts. I don't care if Bitcoin is mooning or crashing. I don't care about the memes or the Lamborghinis. My job is simple: I guard the keys. The routine is the same every morning. At 7:45 a.m., I arrive at the loading dock. I pass through 3 layers of biometric security. First, a fingerprint scanner at the perimeter. Second, a volumetric weight sensor in the man-trap, to ensure I haven't brought in unauthorized hardware or explosives. Third, a retinal scan at the elevator. The elevator only goes down. It takes 45 seconds to descend into the bedrock. In that time, I lose connection with the world. My Spotify cuts out. My phone goes to no service. The silence presses in against your ears, heavy and absolute. I stepped out into the airlock. The air here is recycled, scrubbed of humidity to protect the electronics. It smells of ozone, floor wax, and the metallic tang of high-voltage electricity. I approached the main vault door. It is a debowled circular steel door, the kind they used to use for federal gold reserves in the 1950s. It is entirely mechanical. Digital locks can be hacked, tumblers cannot. To open it, you need the touch. You need to feel the click in your fingertips. Spin left to 40. Spin right to 12. Spin left to 88. The tumblers clicked into place with a heavy, satisfying thud that vibrated through the floor. I turned the massive chrome wheel. The hydraulic seals hissed, releasing the pressure differential, and the door groaned open. I walked into the cage. Inside, it is sparse. There is a metal desk, an ergonomic chair, and a single computer terminal. The computer has no network card. It has no Wi-Fi antenna. The USB ports are filled with epoxy, except for one designated input port. It runs a stripped-down, hardened version of Linux that acts as a secure signing environment. And in the corner, bolted to the concrete floor with titanium anchors, is a smaller safe. Inside that safe lies the master wallet. It is a specialized hardware security module, HSM. It looks like a chunky, silver hard drive reinforced with ballistic casing. Inside that drive are the private keys that control $3.2 billion worth of customer assets. This is the cold storage. In the crypto world, a hot wallet is connected to the internet. It's convenient, fast, and dangerous. Hackers live in hot wallets. They probe them constantly, looking for zero-day exploits. A cold wallet is offline. It is air-gapped. To steal money from a cold wallet, you can't use a keyboard in Moscow or a botnet in Shenzhen. You have to physically come into this room, beat me unconscious, and drill through the safe. I sat down at the desk. I placed my thermos of coffee on the coaster, no liquids allowed near the terminal. The only connection to the outside world is an ancient, red analog telephone. It is a hard line. Copper wire. It doesn't transmit data, only voice. It rang. The sound was jarring in the silence. It echoed off the copper-lined walls like a gunshot. I looked at the clock on the wall. 8:15 a.m. The phone never rings this early. The daily rebalancing request usually comes at noon, after the Asian markets close. I picked it up. "Kade," I said. "Lucas," the voice on the other end was smooth, but there was a tremor in it. A slight breathlessness. It was Adrian Stoll, the CEO of IronGate. "We need an emergency rebalance. Markets are moving fast. The hot wallet is running low on liquidity. Customers are withdrawing en masse." "What's the request?" I asked, opening the physical ledger book. I wrote with a pen. "Ink is unhackable. Transfer 500 Bitcoin to the hot wallet address ending in X9F4, Adrian said. And 10,000 Ethereum." I paused. My pen hovered over the paper. That's a large draw, Adrian, I said slowly. That's nearly $45 million. We usually only move 10 million at a time. Is there a run on the bank? It's high volume, Adrian snapped. He lost his composure for a split second. Volatility is up. Just do it, Lucas. I'm authorizing the signature remotely. The board knows. Understood, I said. Initiating protocol. It will take 20 minutes. Make it 10, Adrian said. I hung up. I stared at the phone for a moment. Adrian Stoll was a visionary, a salesman, and a man who loved the sound of his own voice. He was never brief. He usually started calls with a joke or a comment about the Knicks. Today, he sounded like a man with a gun to his head. I stood up and walked to the floor safe. I scanned my fingerprint. I entered the secondary pin on the keypad. Beep. 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 Clack. The safe popped open. I took out the HSM. It felt cold and heavy in my hand. This small brick contained the retirement funds of teachers, the savings of engineers, the speculative bets of college kids. It was the heart of the company. I walked to the air gap terminal. I plugged the device into the single open port. The screen flickered to life. Green text on black. IronGate Secure OS v4.2 mounting drive. Verifying encryption. Decrypting keys. I typed in my 64-character password. I had memorized it using a mnemonic device based on the periodic table. I never wrote it down. The terminal unlocked the drive. Now, I had to create the transaction. I would sign the transaction here, offline. The private keys would cryptographically sign the data packet. Then, I would save the signed file to a QR code on the screen. I would scan that QR code with a dedicated, receive-only tablet that would broadcast it to the network outside. It's called an air-gap signing. The private keys never touch the internet. Only the signed transaction leaves the room. I navigated to the wallet interface. Checking balance. Usually, this takes a microsecond. The drive reads the encrypted index file and displays the total. But today, the cursor blinked. Blink. 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 A cold feeling started at the base of my spine. It was a primal instinct, the feeling of being watched by a predator. The drive was solid state. It shouldn't lag. Error, index corruption. I frowned. That was impossible. This was military-grade hardware. It had redundant memory blocks. Remount, I whispered to myself. I pulled the drive. I inspected the port. I plugged it back in. Mounting drive. Decrypting. Balance, 0.00000000 balance, 0.00000000 ETH. I stared at the screen. The numbers burned into my retinas. 0. That's a glitch, I said aloud, my voice sounding thin in the recycled air. That's a display error. The GUI is broken. I closed the interface. I opened the raw command line. I queried the key file directly. The file was there. Wallet. Dat, but when I checked the file size, it was 4 kilobytes. The actual key file, containing thousands of derived addresses and private keys, should be 2 megabytes. Someone had wiped it. They hadn't just stolen the money, they had deleted the keys. I didn't panic. Not yet. I was a professional. The backup, I said. Check the backup. There was a secondary drive, hidden in a false bottom of the safe, wrapped in a tamper-evident bag. It was the Doomsday drive. I retrieved it. I cut the bag open. I plugged it in. Mounting backup. Decrypting. Balance, 0.00000000 BTC. Now, the panic hit. It hit hard, like a physical blow to the stomach. $3 billion. Gone. But how? The keys were offline. They had never left this room. I was the only one who entered this room. The logs were immutable. I checked the file timestamps on the primary drive. Last modified, 3 a.m. today. At 3 a.m., I was asleep in my apartment in Brooklyn. The building access logs would prove the elevator hadn't moved. The retinal scanner hadn't been activated. The weight sensors hadn't triggered. And yet, someone had accessed the drive. I looked closer at the Linux command history logs / /bash_history. There was a single command executed at 3:01 a.m. Shred uz/me/keys/wallet. Dat. The shred command. It overwrites the data with zeros 20 times so it can never be recovered by forensics. But who typed it? I looked at the user login. User, root login method, physical terminal. Impossible. No one was here. You cannot remote into this machine. It has no network card. I leaned in, examining the computer tower itself. I checked the epoxy-filled ports. They looked intact. Then I looked at the back of the machine, where the keyboard cable plugged in. Sticking out of the motherboard, hidden amidst the tangle of thick power cables, was a tiny, black dongle. It was matte black, barely the size of a thumbnail. It looked like a wireless mouse receiver. I reached back and pulled it out. It was a rubber ducky, a malicious USB tool used by penetration testers. It masquerades as a standard keyboard. If you plug it in, the computer trusts it instantly. It waits for a timer, or a specific trigger, and then it executes a pre-written script at 1,000 words per minute. It typed the command. It typed the shred order. But it had to be physically planted. My mind raced back. Who had been in the cage? Yesterday morning. Adrian. It was rare for the CEO to visit the cage. He hated the basement. He claimed it triggered his claustrophobia. But yesterday, he had insisted on a compliance audit. He wanted to verify the physical integrity of the hardware for the new insurance policy. He had brought me a coffee. He had sat at my desk, chatting about the future of DeFi, while I opened the safe to show him the drives. He had stood up to look at the back of the terminal. "Are the warranty seals still intact, Lucas?" he had asked. "Let me check the serial number label on the back." He had leaned over. He had blocked my view for 3 seconds. I dropped the black USB stick on the desk. It rattled. Adrian didn't want to transfer 500 Bitcoin today. He knew the wallet was empty. He knew because he was the one who emptied it. He wasn't calling to get money. He was calling to trigger the alarm. He wanted me to discover it. He wanted my fingerprints on the keyboard. He wanted me to be the one logged in when the system reported the zero balance. The red phone rang again. I stared at it. It wasn't Adrian this time. Adrian wouldn't call back after 5 minutes. He was waiting for me to call him in a panic. I picked it up slowly. The receiver felt heavy. "Kade," I said. "Lucas Kade?" The voice was unfamiliar. Hard. Authoritative. "Who is this?" "This is Special Agent Miller, FBI Cyber Division. We are currently executing a federal search warrant at your apartment in Brooklyn. We advise you to remain where you are. Do not attempt to leave the secure area. A tactical team is descending the elevator now." "My apartment. What are you looking for, Agent Miller?" I asked, though the cold logic of the frame-up was already slotting into place in my mind. "We found the drives, Lucas," Miller said, his voice dripping with false victory. "We found the backup copies of the private keys under your mattress. And we found the wire transfer confirmation from the Cayman Islands on your laptop." "I see," I said. "You found exactly what you were supposed to find. Step away from the terminal. Keep your hands visible." I looked at the empty safe. I looked at the black USB stick on the desk. It was a magic trick. The greatest magic trick in financial history. Adrian hadn't stolen the money yesterday. He had likely been draining the liquidity for months, perhaps years, hiding the losses in complex wash trading schemes. But the hole had gotten too big. He couldn't hide the missing billions forever. So he staged a heist. He put a script in the cold room to wipe the records. He planted the stolen data in my home. And now, he was sending the feds to collect the patsy. I hung up the phone. I could hear the elevator gears grinding in the distance. The heavy thrum of the hydraulic lift coming down. I had about 45 seconds before the tactical team breached the airlock. I looked at the terminal. I couldn't stop them. I couldn't run. There is only one way out of the Faraday Cage, and it was currently filled with armed federal agents. But Adrian had made a mistake. A fatal error. He thought I was just a guard dog. He thought I was a glorified security guard who knew how to open a safe. He forgot that I was the one who built the system architecture 5 years ago. He forgot that I wrote the kernel. I sat back down at the terminal. My hands were steady. I didn't try to recover the money. That was gone. The shred command had done its job. Instead, I opened the command line and navigated to a hidden partition on the root drive. A partition labeled system_logs, which no one ever checked. Inside was a script I had buried deep in the system kernel 3 years ago. /bloodhound_v1.sh arm. I hit enter. The screen flashed green. Dead man switch, armed. Timer, 72 hours 0 minutes 0 seconds. Missing check-in action, broadcast_truth. If I didn't verify my identity with a biometric handshake in 3 days, the system would unleash hell. It wouldn't just look for the money, it would hunt it. The heavy steel door of the vault shuddered. Someone was pounding on it. FBI. Open up. Federal agents. I stood up. I buttoned my blazer. "You want a villain, Adrian?" I whispered to the empty, copper-lined room. "I'll give you a villain." I walked to the massive chrome wheel. I grabbed the cold steel. I turned the wheel and opened the door, the perp walk. The sensation of sunlight after 5 years of working in a dungeon is blinding. I didn't see the sun immediately, though. First, I felt the steel cuffs biting into my wrists. Then I felt the rough hands of the FBI tactical team shoving me into the freight elevator. Then came the lobby, a blur of frightened receptionists and security guards who had waved good morning to me every day for half a decade, now looking at me like I was a monster. But the real show was outside. "Head down." Agent Miller barked, gripping my bicep with enough force to bruise. "Keep moving." They pushed me through the revolving doors onto the sidewalk of Jersey City. The world exploded in white light. It wasn't just the sun. It was the flashbulbs. Hundreds of them. Strobe lights popping in a chaotic rhythm. The noise was a physical wall, a roar of shouting voices, clicking shutters, and the idling diesel engines of satellite trucks. I squinted against the glare. There were barriers set up. Police tape fluttering in the wind. Behind the tape was a sea of cameras. CNN. CNBC. Bloomberg. Fox Business. They were all there. Adrian hadn't just called the police, he had called the press. He had timed the raid perfectly to catch the morning news cycle. "Mr. Kade. Did you steal the keys?" "Lucas. Where is the 3 billion? Did you act alone?" A microphone on a boom pole swung dangerously close to my head, nearly hitting Agent Miller. He swatted it away. "Back. Get back," Miller shouted. This was the perp walk. It's an American ritual. The authorities parade the suspect in front of the media to signal competence. "Look, we caught the bad guy. The system works." For Adrian, it served a different purpose. It was a narrative anchor. By showing my face, the pale, shell-shocked face of the rogue's employee, he was shifting the narrative from company failure to criminal act. I didn't look down. Most people hide their faces. They pull their jackets over their heads. They stare at the pavement. I looked up. I looked directly into the lens of the nearest camera. I wanted Adrian to see me. I wanted him to see that I wasn't crying. I wasn't breaking. I was counting. 71 hours left. They shoved me into the back of a black Suburban. The heavy door slammed shut, cutting off the roar of the crowd. The silence returned, but this time it wasn't the peaceful silence of the Faraday cage. It was the suffocating silence of captivity. Agent Miller climbed into the front seat. He looked back at me through the wire mesh. He was smiling. It was the smile of a man who just made his career. "You look good on camera, Lucas," Miller said. "Enjoy the fame. It's the last time you'll see daylight for 20 years. The interrogation room at the FBI field office in Newark was exactly like the movies, only colder. The air conditioning was cranked up to freezing. The table was bolted to the floor. The mirror on the wall was obviously one-way glass. They left me there for 3 hours. This is a tactic. It's called stewing. They want you to sit alone with your fear, imagining the worst, so that when they finally walk in, you're ready to trade anything for a glass of water." I didn't stew. I sat perfectly still. I closed my eyes and visualized the code of the Bloodhound script. Function trace_dust origin_wallet. I mentally debugged it line by line. I checked the logic gates. I verified the API calls to the block explorer. It was a coping mechanism. The logic was safe. The logic was controllable. Finally, the door opened. Agent Miller walked in, carrying a thick manila folder. He threw it onto the metal table with a loud thwack. He sat down opposite me. "We have it all, Lucas," Miller said, skipping the pleasantries. "We don't need a confession. Honestly, I'm just here to see if you have any shred of decency left to help us recover the funds before the market completely collapses." I stayed silent. Miller opened the folder. He spread photos out on the table like a tarot card reader. "Exhibit A," he said, pointing to a photo of a messy bedroom. "My bedroom." An agent was holding up a pair of silver hard drives in an evidence bag. "Found these taped under your box spring. Our tech guys confirmed they contain an encrypted copy of the IronGate master keys." I looked at the photo. It was clumsy. Taping drives under a bed? It was something a bad writer would put in a screenplay. "Exhibit B," Miller continued, pointing to a screenshot of a bank statement. "An account at the Bank of Georgetown, Cayman Islands. Opened in your name 6 months ago. Balance, $5 million US. The wire transfer originated from a shell company linked to a crypto mixer." And Exhibit C, Miller slid a piece of paper across the table. "A flight itinerary. One-way ticket to Bangkok, departing tonight at 11 p.m. You were going to run." I looked at the ticket. I had never booked a flight to Bangkok. Adrian had been busy. He had constructed a complete alternate reality. "It's a solid story, Agent Miller," I said, my voice raspy from dehydration. "It really hangs together. The greedy insider. The hidden stash. The getaway flight. Did you write it, or did Adrian Stoll give you the cliff notes?" Miller laughed. "You think you're smarter than us, don't you? You tech guys always do. You think because you can write code, you can outsmart the federal government. But you made a mistake. You got greedy. You transferred the $5 million too early." "I didn't transfer anything," I said calmly. "And those drives under my bed? They're blank. Or they're filled with random data. You haven't cracked the encryption because you can't. And if you did, you'd find they are useless decoys." "They are encrypted," Miller admitted. "Which is why you are going to give me the password. Right now." "I don't have the password," I said. "Because I didn't encrypt them. Ask Adrian for the password. He's the one who bought them." Miller leaned forward, his face inches from mine. "Adrian Stoll is a cooperating witness. He is currently helping the SEC trace the assets you stole. He is trying to save his company. You are the only villain in this room, Lucas." He reached for a remote control on the table and turned on the small TV mounted in the corner. "Watch," Miller said. The screen flickered to CNBC. The banner at the bottom was red, "Crypto Crash. BTC down 20%. On the screen was Adrian Stoll. He was standing on the steps of the IronGate headquarters. He looked devastated. He was wearing a suit without a tie, his top button undone, the universal uniform of the crisis CEO. He wiped a tear from his eye. "We trusted Lucas Kade," Adrian said into the microphones. "He was family to us. We gave him the keys to the kingdom because we believed in his integrity. To find out that he has been systematically draining our reserves. It breaks my heart. Not for the money, but for the betrayal." Adrian paused for effect. He looked directly into the camera. "To our customers, I say this, IronGate is solvent. We have insurance. We are working with the FBI to recover the stolen assets. We will make you whole. Justice will be served." Miller turned off the TV. "He's good," I said. "He should win an Oscar." "He's the victim," Miller snapped. "You destroyed a company today, Lucas. 2 million people can't access their savings because of you. Single mothers. Retirees. That's on you." "Can I see my lawyer now?" I asked. Miller stared at me for a long moment. He saw no remorse. He saw no panic. It unnerved him. "Public defender is outside," Miller said, standing up. "Good luck. You're going to need it." My lawyer was a woman named Elena Russo. She looked like she hadn't slept in a week. She carried a briefcase that was fraying at the edges and smelled faintly of cigarette smoke. She sat down where Miller had been. She didn't look at me. She looked at the file Miller had left. "Okay, Mr. Kade," she said, flipping through the pages rapidly. "I'm going to be straight with you. I've handled 10 federal fraud cases this year. I've lost all 10. The feds don't indict unless they have a 99% conviction rate. She looked up at me. Her eyes were tired, dark circles underneath them. They have the drives. They have the money trail. They have the flight ticket. It's a slam dunk. If we go to trial, you're looking at 30 years. Federal sentencing guidelines for this amount of money are brutal. I didn't do it, I said. Elena sighed. It was a sound of profound exhaustion. Everyone says that, Lucas. Please don't insult my intelligence. My job isn't to judge you, it's to get you a deal. If you give them the password to the drives and return the assets, I can maybe get you down to 10 years. Maybe 8 with good behavior. The drives are fake, Elena, I said. The money in the Cayman account isn't mine. It was planted. Planted, she repeated, rubbing her temples. By the CEO of a billion-dollar company? He risked a 20-year sentence to frame his janitor? Custodian, I corrected. And yes. Because he didn't steal $3 billion yesterday. He stole it over the last 3 years. He's insolvent. This is an exit scam. Elena looked at me. For a second, just a second, I saw a flicker of curiosity. Can you prove it? She asked. Do you have emails? Recordings? Logs? No, I said. He air-gapped me. I have no digital footprint. Then it's your word against his, she said, closing the file. And he's on CNBC crying about family while you're sitting here in cuffs. The jury will crucify you. She leaned in. Take the deal, Lucas. Give them the password. I looked at the clock on the wall. It was an analog clock, ticking loudly. 11 a.m. I had armed the Bloodhound at 8:45 a.m. 2 hours and 15 minutes had passed. 69 hours and 45 minutes left. I can't take the deal, I said. Because I don't have the password. And even if I did, it wouldn't help. Elena stood up. She looked angry now. Then you're going to rot in here. I can't help a client who wants to be a martyr. I don't need you to win the case, Elena, I said softly. I just need you to stall. Stall? Stall for what? For the truth to come out. The truth doesn't just come out in federal court, Lucas. You have to drag it out. It will, I said. In 3 days. What happens in 3 days? I smiled. It was the first time I had smiled since I opened the safe. The statute of limitations on bullshit expires. Elena stared at me. She didn't understand. She picked up her briefcase. I'll schedule a bail hearing, she said dismissively. But don't hold your breath. You're a flight risk with $5 million in the bank. She walked out. I was alone again. I looked at the mirror. I knew Miller was behind it, watching. I knew Adrian was probably somewhere in Manhattan, popping a bottle of champagne, thinking he had won. He thought he had cut off my hands. He thought that by taking my physical freedom, he had neutralized me. But he didn't understand the nature of the machine I had built. The Bloodhound was awake. It was running on a virtual server buried in the decentralized cloud. It was currently checking the blockchain, waiting for my biometric signature. Tick. 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 Every second that passed was 1 second closer to the end of Adrian's stole. I leaned back in the metal chair and closed my eyes. I prepared to wait, the solvent lie. The Metropolitan Detention Center, MDC, in Brooklyn is a concrete fortress that smells of industrial disinfectant, stale sweat, and misery. It is a vertical warehouse for human beings awaiting trial. Unlike a prison, where people know their sentence, a detention center is filled with uncertainty. It vibrates with a specific frequency of anxiety. I was processed in with the efficiency of a slaughterhouse. Fingerprints. Mugshot. Strip search. The orange jumpsuit that smelled of someone else's body odor. They took my suit, my watch, and my shoes. They gave me canvas slip-ons that were 2 sizes too small. Because my case was high profile, and because the nature of my alleged crime involved billions of dollars, I was deemed a target. The warden didn't put me in general population immediately. He put me in the Special Housing Unit, SHU Administrative Segregation. Solitary confinement, but with a nicer name. I sat on the thin mattress, staring at the painted cinderblock wall. I checked my internal clock. 1 p.m. The Bloodhound had been armed for 4 hours and 15 minutes. 67 hours and 45 minutes remaining. A guard walked by. He didn't look like the other guards. He wasn't bored. He stopped at my cell door and stared at me through the thick plexiglass. His name tag read Griggs. His face was red, his jaw clenched tight. He tapped on the glass with his baton. Thud. Thud. I looked up. You comfortable, Kade? Griggs asked. His voice was muffled by the heavy door, but the venom cut through. Not particularly, officer, I replied. Good, Griggs said. My brother lost $40,000 today. He had his down payment for a house on IronGate. Gone. Poof. He stepped closer, his breath fogging the glass. They say you stole it all. They say you have it stashed on an island somewhere. Is that true? It's not true, officer. I didn't steal a dime. Yeah, Griggs sneered. That's what the guy in the cell next to you says. He killed his wife. Says he didn't do that either. He spat on the floor. If it were up to me, I'd open this door and let the boys in Gen Pop have 5 minutes with you. There are a lot of people in here who used IronGate to hide their hustle money. You're not popular, Kade. He walked away, his baton dragging against the bars of the walkway. I lay back down. The threat was real. In here, money is God. And I was the man who had supposedly killed God. 2 hours later, the routine changed. Usually, SHU inmates get 1 hour of rec time in a caged outdoor area. But today, the facility was on lockdown due to a fight in Unit B. So, instead of fresh air, they let us into the unit's common area one by one to shower and make a phone call. When my turn came, Griggs unlocked the door. "You got 30 minutes, he said. "Don't cause trouble." I walked out into the small common area. There was a metal table, a shower stall, a phone bank, and a television mounted high on the wall inside a protective cage. The TV was on. It was always on. And it was tuned to CNBC. I walked toward it. The volume was low, but I could read the Chiron scrolling across the bottom of the screen. It was a sea of red arrows. Bitcoin, $18,400, minus 22% Ethereum, $980, minus 28% IronGate Exchange, trading halted. Nasdaq, Coinbase down 15% on contagion fears. The market was blood red. The Kade event, as they were probably calling it, had triggered a liquidity cascade. Margin calls were firing off across the globe. Hedge funds were liquidating assets to cover positions. And then, the breaking news banner flashed. Live, IronGate CEO Adrian Stoll speaks. I stood frozen in the center of the room. The screen cut to a podium set up in the lobby of the IronGate headquarters in Manhattan. It was a sleek, modernist space with a living wall of greenery in the background, a symbol of growth that now looked like a cruel joke. Adrian Stoll walked onto the stage. I had known Adrian for 5 years. I knew his power walk, shoulders back, chin up, smiling like a shark. This was not that walk. He walked slowly, his head bowed. He wore a navy suit, no tie. He looked smaller. He looked like a man carrying the weight of the world. It was a masterpiece of physical acting. He gripped the sides of the podium. He took a sip of water. His hand shook visibly. "Good afternoon," Adrian began. His voice cracked. He cleared his throat. "This is the hardest day of my life. It is the hardest day in the history of IronGate." He looked directly into the camera. "As you know, early this morning, the FBI raided the home of our former chief custodian, Kade. They recovered hard drives containing what we believe to be the encryption keys to our cold storage vaults." He paused. "However," my stomach tightened. "Here it comes. The pivot." "However," Adrian continued, his voice dropping to a whisper, "upon preliminary analysis by our forensic team, it appears that the keys recovered were old. They were decoys. The funds associated with those keys are gone." He took a deep breath. Kade didn't just steal the keys today. The evidence suggests he has been siphoning assets from the cold wallet for months, replacing the real data with corrupted loops to fool our auditing software. We believe the theft totals over $3.2 billion. The room in the detention center was silent, save for the hum of the refrigerator. I watched the man lie with a precision that was almost beautiful. "We have tried to secure emergency funding," Adrian said. "I have spent the last 6 hours on the phone with our investors, with banks, with the Federal Reserve. I have put my own personal fortune on the line." He shook his head. "But the hole is too deep. The damage is too catastrophic. Because of the actions of this one rogue employee. IronGate is insolvent." Insolvent. The word hung on the screen. "Therefore," Adrian said, "it is with a broken heart that I announce we are filing for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection, effective immediately. All customer withdrawals are frozen. All trading is suspended. We will work with the bankruptcy courts to liquidate remaining assets and return what we can to our users." He stepped back from the podium. "I am sorry," he whispered. "I trusted him. We all did." He walked off stage. The press erupted. I stared at the screen. It was the solvent lie. If I had simply stolen the keys, IronGate would still be a functioning company. They would have insurance. They would have reserves. A $3 billion loss hurts, but for an exchange with IronGate's volume, it wasn't a death sentence. They made $500 million a year in trading fees. They could have taken a loan. They could have issued a bond. But Adrian declared insolvency. That meant the money wasn't just stolen today. It meant the money had never been there. It meant that for the last 2 years, while Bitcoin was booming, Adrian had been running a fractional reserve. He had been taking customer deposits and gambling them, probably on leverage, probably on risky altcoins, or maybe just siphoning it off to buy yachts and penthouses. The hole wasn't $3 billion. It was probably $10 billion. And he needed a scapegoat. He needed a catastrophic event to explain why the vault was empty. If he just admitted he lost the money gambling, he goes to prison for fraud. But if a rogue employee steals it, then he is a victim. He is a CEO who was betrayed. He gets to file Chapter 11, wash his hands of the debt, and retire to a non-extradition country while the lawyers fight over the scraps. "You son of a bitch," I whispered. "You can say that again," Officer Griggs said from the doorway. I hadn't heard him come in. He was leaning against the doorframe, watching the TV. His face was pale. "Chapter 11, Griggs said numbly. "That means 0. That means I get pennies on the dollar in 10 years. He looked at me. The anger was gone, replaced by a hollow despair. "Why didn't you just take half?" Griggs asked. "Why did you have to take it all?" "I didn't take it, Griggs," I said, turning to face him. "Did you hear him? He said insolvent. He declared bankruptcy 10 minutes after the news broke. That's not a reaction to a theft. That's a pre-planned demolition." "Don't try to spin it," Griggs said, shaking his head. "You're the guy with the keys." "Yes," I said. "And Adrian is the guy with the exit plan." I looked back at the TV. The pundits were already dissecting the corpse of IronGate. They were showing my mugshot next to Bernie Madoff. I realized then the brilliance of Adrian's timeline. By declaring bankruptcy now, he froze everything. The court would appoint a trustee. The forensic accountants would take months to get access to the servers. The chaos of the bankruptcy would obscure the forensic trail. Adrian was betting on the bureaucracy. He was betting that by the time anyone realized the money had been missing for years, the trail would be cold, and I would already be convicted. He was counting on the confusion. But he wasn't counting on the Bloodhound. I looked at the clock on the wall above the TV. 3:30 p.m. 65 hours and 30 minutes left. My death was the trigger. Adrian had essentially killed me today. He had killed my reputation, my freedom, and my future. But in doing so, he had started the autopsy. "Time's up, Kade," Griggs said. "Back in the hole." I walked back to my cell. As the heavy steel door slammed shut, plunging me back into the semi-darkness of the SHU, I felt a strange sense of calm. Adrian thought he had closed the book. He thought the press conference was the finale. He didn't know that he had just narrated the prologue to his own destruction. I sat on the cot. I closed my eyes. I imagined the server in the cloud. A small, silent packet of code, sleeping in the darkness of the internet. Waiting for a handshake that would never come. "Sleep well, Adrian," I thought. "Enjoy the yacht. Enjoy the sympathy. Because in 65 hours, the dog gets let off the leash, the paper tiger. Time in solitary confinement does not flow, it drips. It is a leaking faucet in a dark room. You wait for the drop, you hear it hit, and then you wait for the next one." I spent the first night counting the cinder blocks in my cell. There are 64 blocks on the long wall, 48 on the short wall. I counted the rivets on the steel door. I counted the beats of my own heart. But mostly, I counted down. 48 hours remaining. The Bloodhound was a silent ghost in the machine, and I was its tether. Every hour that passed without my biometric signature was a tightening of the spring. I slept in 20-minute bursts. I dreamed of code. I dreamed of waterfalls of alphanumeric characters cascading down a screen, turning from green to red. On the morning of the second day, the heavy steel door unlocked with a mechanical clank that vibrated through my teeth. "Legal visit," the guard grunted. It wasn't Griggs this time, it was a younger guard who looked bored rather than angry. "Cuff up." I turned around and put my hands through the slot. The cold steel ratcheted tight. They marched me down the hallway, past the other SHU cells. I could hear the inmates shouting, a cacophony of rage and madness echoing off the concrete. They called me billion-dollar man. They asked for loans. They threw trash at the bars. The attorney meeting room was a small, windowless box divided by a thick sheet of plexiglass. On the other side sat Elena Russo. She looked worse than she had yesterday. Her blazer was wrinkled. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun. There were 3 empty coffee cups on the table next to her, and a mountain of paperwork. She didn't say hello. She picked up a thick stack of documents and slapped them against the glass. "Discovery," she said, her voice muffled by the barrier. "The U.S. attorney just dropped the initial evidence load. It's a nightmare, Lucas." I sat down. The metal stool was bolted to the floor. "Tell me," I said. Elena opened the file. "They have the forensic report on the hard drives found under your bed. The FBI Cyber Division claims they are encrypted with a PGP key that matches a key found on your laptop. They are calling it the smoking gun. They say those drives contain the private keys to the missing billions." "They're lying," I said. "Or they're incompetent. Probably both." "Incompetent?" Elena laughed, a harsh, humorless sound. "Lucas, this report is signed by the head of the NY field office. They have metadata linking the drive serial numbers to the IronGate inventory log. They have your fingerprints on the casing. They have you dead to rights." "It's a paper tiger," I said. Elena stopped shuffling papers. "A what?" "A paper tiger," I repeated. "It's an ancient Chinese metaphor, something that looks threatening but is actually harmless. Those drives. They look like the keys. They have the right serial numbers. They are encrypted like the keys. But if you actually crack them open? If you actually spent the 10,000 years of computing power required to brute force that encryption?" I leaned forward, my forehead resting against the cool plastic. "You'd find zeros. They are empty, Elena. They are props. Adrian bought them, wiped them, encrypted the empty space, and planted them. He gave the FBI a locked box and told them the crown jewels are inside. The FBI is so happy to have the box, they haven't stopped to think why it was so easy to find." Elena rubbed her eyes. "Why would he do that? Why plant empty drives?" "Because he needed a prop for the perp walk," I said. "He needed something for the cameras. Look. We found the loot. It stops the panic. It makes everyone think the money is recoverable. If the money is recoverable, the mob doesn't burn down his house." Elena looked at the documents again. She was searching for a loophole, a thread to pull. "Okay," she said slowly. "Let's assume you're right. Let's assume the drives are fake. What about the wire transfer? $5 million, Lucas. From a shell company in the Caymans directly to an account in your name. The routing numbers match." "Check the date," I said. "What?" "Check the date of the wire transfer. Not the date it arrived, the date it was initiated." Elena flipped through the pages. She found the bank record. She squinted at the small print. "Date of origin. August 14th. She looked up. "That was 3 months ago." "Exactly," I said. "I supposedly stole the keys 2 days ago. Why would I pay myself $5 million 3 months before the crime?" Elena frowned. The gears were turning. "A down payment? An advance? Or," I said, "it was a setup that took time to build." You can't open an offshore account instantly. It takes weeks of KYC, know your customer, compliance. Adrian set that account up in August using my stolen identity info. He funded it slowly to avoid tripping anti-money laundering alarms. He was building the frame before he even painted the picture. Elena sat back. She looked at the ceiling, then back at me. You're telling me this wasn't a heist, she whispered. You're telling me it was an exit strategy. IronGate has been bleeding for a long time, Elena. The bull market hid the losses. Everyone looks like a genius when Bitcoin goes up. But when the market turned, the tide went out. And Adrian was swimming naked. I looked at the clock on the wall behind her. 10 a.m. 50 hours remaining. I need you to do something for me, I said. I can't smuggle anything out, Lucas. They monitor everything. I don't need you to smuggle anything. I need you to be a lawyer. I need you to check the Pacer database. For what? Adrian filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy yesterday afternoon, right? Yes. It was all over the news. Bankruptcy filings for a multi-billion-dollar corporation are not Napeek and doodles, Elena. They are thousands of pages long. They require lists of creditors, asset schedules, liabilities, affidavits. They take weeks to draft. Huge teams of corporate lawyers bill thousands of hours to prepare them. I lowered my voice. You don't draft a Chapter 11 petition in the 6 hours between a theft and a press conference. It's physically impossible. Elena's eyes went wide. She realized what I was saying. If the filing is complete. She murmured. Then it was written weeks ago, I finished. Check the creation dates on the PDF metadata of the court filings. Check the retainer agreements for the bankruptcy counsel. If they were hired before the theft, then the theft is a lie. It proves premeditation. It proves they knew the ship was sinking long before I allegedly drilled a hole in the hull. Elena gathered the papers. Her hands were shaking slightly. She wasn't just a public defender going through the motions anymore. She smelled blood. If that's true, she said, then this isn't just fraud. It's conspiracy. It's RICO. It brings down the whole board of directors. It brings down everything, I agreed. She stood up. She looked at me with a new expression. It wasn't pity. It was respect. Or maybe fear. You're not just a custodian, are you, Lucas? I built the vault, Elena, I said. I know where the cracks are. I'll check the filings, she said. I'll pull the metadata. But Lucas, even if I prove premeditation, it doesn't prove you didn't help him. The prosecutor will just say you were a co-conspirator who got thrown under the bus. It doesn't exonerate you. It's a start, I said. It buys doubt. Doubt buys time. Time for what? She asked. You're sitting in a box. What are you waiting for? I couldn't tell her. I couldn't tell her about the Bloodhound. If I told her, she would be legally obligated to report it to the court, or she would be an accessory to an unauthorized computer intrusion. I'm waiting for the tide to go out, I said cryptically. She shook her head. You're a strange man, Lucas Kade. I'll be back tomorrow. She knocked on the glass. The guard opened the door. As she left, I saw her pull out her phone and start typing furiously. She was checking the dates. I was marched back to my cell. The walk back felt different. The other inmates were still screaming, but I tuned them out. My mind was focused on the next phase. Adrian had constructed a beautiful, intricate lie. He had built a fortress of falsehoods. But he had built it on a foundation of paperwork. And paperwork leaves a trail. I sat on my bunk. I closed my eyes. I visualized the blockchain. It is a public ledger. It is the only truth in a world of liars. Every transaction, every movement of value, is etched into history forever. Adrian thought he had washed the money. He thought that by running it through Mixer software that jumbles coins together to hide their origin, he had erased his tracks. But he didn't know about the dust. 3 years ago, during a routine security audit, I had deployed a dusting attack on our own cold wallet. It wasn't an attack, really. It was a tagging system. I had sent microscopic amounts of Bitcoin, Satoshis, worth fractions of a penny, to every single unspent transaction output, UTXO, in the vault. These tiny amounts of dust were mathematically linked to the massive blocks of Ethereum and Bitcoin. They were like radioactive dye. You can wash the money. You can split it, tumble it, swap it for Monero, and route it through a dozen shell wallets in Russia. But unless you are incredibly, surgically careful to separate the dust, it follows you. It sticks to the digital shoe of the thief. And the Bloodhound? It had a nose for dust. I checked my internal clock. 46 hours remaining. In 46 hours, the Bloodhound would wake up. It would sniff the blockchain. It would find the radioactive dye. And it would follow the trail all the way to the end. I lay back on the thin pillow. I wondered what Adrian was doing right now. Probably giving another interview. Probably crying about betrayal. He didn't know that he was currently sitting on top of a nuclear bomb, and I was the only one holding the abort key. And I had just thrown the key away, the Bloodhound. The world runs on clocks. Not the analog ticking on the wall, but the Unix epoch, the number of seconds that have passed since January 1, 1970. It is the heartbeat of every server, every satellite, and every banking system on Earth. In my cell in the special housing unit, I didn't have a server. I had the rhythm of the guard patrols and the fading light through the slit window. I sat on the edge of my bunk, hands clasped. I counted the final minute. 58. 59. 72 hours 0 minutes 0 seconds elapsed. I exhaled. In a physical sense, nothing changed. The steel door didn't open. The air didn't get warmer. The shouting of the inmates down the hall didn't stop. But in the digital ether, a ghost just woke up. Somewhere in a data center in Iceland, or maybe a server farm in Virginia, depending on where the decentralized cloud decided to host the container today, a script triggered. It checked for a specific digital signature, my biometric hash, signed with my private PGP key. It queried the IronGate internal server API. Response: null. Retry: 1. Retry: 2. Retry: 3. Condition met, custodian silenced. Protocol: activate Bloodhound. I lay back on the pillow. I imagined the code executing. It wasn't AI. It wasn't some sci-fi consciousness. It was math. It was a relentless, unthinking force of logic that I had written in C++ 3 years ago on a rainy Tuesday. And it was hungry. The cloud. The program was small, less than 50 megabytes. It lived inside an encrypted Docker container that I had paid for with anonymous Monero years ago. It had been sleeping, dormant, pinging the heartbeat server once an hour. Now, it expanded. It established a connection to the Bitcoin and Ethereum networks. It didn't download the whole blockchain, that would take too long. Instead, it connected to a series of high-speed block explorer search engines for the public ledger. It had one target: the dust. To understand how the Bloodhound works, you have to understand how money laundering works. When Adrian stole the money, he didn't just transfer $3 billion to his personal checking account. That would trigger every alarm at the Federal Reserve. Instead, he used mixers. Imagine you rob a bank and steal a bag of marked bills. You can't spend them. So, you run into a crowded casino. You dump your bag of marked bills into a pile with 1,000 other people's bags. The casino shakes the pile, mixes it all up, and then gives everyone back a bag of money of equal value. The money you get back is clean. The serial numbers are different. The trail is broken. In crypto, this is called tornado cash or a coin join. You put your stolen Bitcoin in one side, it gets jumbled with legitimate traffic, and it comes out the other side into a fresh, anonymous wallet. It is mathematically impossible to trace. Or so they say. But Adrian didn't know about the dust. 3 years ago, I deployed a dusting attack on our own cold wallet. It's a technique usually used by hackers to de-anonymize users, but I used it for security. I sent microscopic amounts of Bitcoin, satoshis, worth fractions of a penny, to every single address in our vault. These satoshis were special. They were unspent transaction outputs, UXOs, that were mathematically linked to the massive blocks of Ethereum and Bitcoin. Think of it like throwing a bucket of glitter onto a pile of cash. When Adrian moved the billions, he moved the glitter too. He ran the money through the mixers. He tumbled it. He split it into 10,000 smaller wallets. He routed it through exchanges in Seychelles and Russia. But unless he was surgically careful to separate the dust, which requires a level of technical expertise Adrian Stoll did not possess, the glitter stayed stuck to the money. The hunt. The Bloodhound began to scan. It looked at the transaction history of the IronGate cold wallet starting from 6 months ago, when I suspected the theft began. It found the first massive outflow. 500 BTC moved on August 12. It followed the transaction. Hop 1, the money moved to an intermediate wallet. Hop 2, the money was split into 50 chunks of 10 BTC each. Hop 3, the chunks entered the mixer. Usually, the trail ends here. The mixer is a black box. You see money go in, you see money come out, but you can't link the input to the output. But the Bloodhound ignored the amounts. It looked for the dust. It scanned the thousands of transactions exiting the mixer in the hours following the deposit. Most of the exiting money was clean. It belonged to legitimate privacy advocates, traders, or minor criminals. But then, ping. Match found. Dust signature, UXO 8842. Detected. Output wallet, BC1Q. Xi7Z. The Bloodhound flagged the wallet. Then another. Ping. Then another. Ping. It was like watching invisible ink appear under a UV light. Adrian thought he was washing the money. In reality, he was just spreading the contamination. Every wallet that received the laundered funds was now glowing radioactive green to my script. The script spun up more threads. It needed more processing power. It rented time on a decentralized GPU network. It was burning through my prepaid credits at a rate of $500 an hour. I didn't care. It traced the Ethereum. It traced the Solana. It traced the USDC stablecoins. It built a map. A massive, sprawling spiderweb of transactions. The web started wide, thousands of anonymous wallets scattered across the digital landscape. But then, the web started to tighten. The Bloodhound noticed a pattern. The clean wallets weren't spending the money. They weren't buying NFTs or trading on Binance. They were consolidating. Wallet A sent funds to Wallet B. Wallet C sent funds to Wallet B. Wallet D sent funds to Wallet B. Slowly, methodically, the thousands of small streams were merging back into a river. Adrian was greedy. He didn't want the money scattered in 10,000 USB drives buried in the desert. He wanted to use it. He wanted to buy things. And to buy big things, like real estate, jets, or companies, you need to consolidate the funds into a vehicle that can interact with the traditional banking system. The Bloodhound followed the river. It traced the funds to a cluster of high-value wallets. These wallets were holding over $200 million in USDC. Then, a mistake. A human error. One of the high-value wallets made a transaction that wasn't a transfer. It was a smart contract interaction. The wallet interacted with a service called BitPay, a payment processor that allows you to buy real-world goods with crypto. The Bloodhound queried the transaction hash. Amount, $4,500,000 USDC. Merchant, redacted luxury maritime brokerage. The script couldn't read the merchant's private invoice. But it could read the public blockchain tag associated with the merchant address. The address belonged to a company in Monaco known for selling super yachts. The Bloodhound paused. It verified the link. Input, IronGate cold wallet, stolen funds plus dust. Process, mixer, laundering. Output, anonymous wallet, still holding dust. Action, payment to yacht broker. The chain of custody was unbroken. The radioactive glitter was on the hull of the boat. The script saved the data. It had the what, the money. It had the where, Monaco. Now it needed the who. It began to scrape the metadata of the transaction. It looked for IP addresses that might have leaked through a VPN failure. It looked for timestamps that correlated with Adrian's public appearances. But it didn't need to be that subtle. Because the yacht broker required a name. They required a passport scan. The Bloodhound couldn't hack the broker's database. It wasn't a hacking tool, it was an analytics tool. But it could do something else. It checked the open source intelligence, OSINT, feeds. It scanned maritime registries. It scanned Instagram. It scanned news articles about recent high-profile yacht sales. Search query, yacht sale greater than $200 million greater than Monaco greater than last 6 months. Result 1, the S. Aurora. Buyer, Anonymous Shell Corp Neptune Holdings. Registry, Cayman Islands. The Bloodhound cross-referenced Neptune Holdings. It searched the leaked Panama Papers database and other corporate registry leaks that were publicly available on the dark web. It found a match. Neptune Holdings. Director, Adrian Stoll. The loop was closed. The script had connected the stolen Bitcoin dust in the secure vault directly to the signature on the purchase order for a floating palace. The verdict. In my cell, the air felt electric. I couldn't see the screen. I couldn't see the graph. But I felt the shift. The Bloodhound had finished its meal. It compiled the report. A 500-page PDF containing every transaction hash, every wallet address, every dust signature, and the final link to the yacht. It encrypted the file. Then, it prepared for the final step. Protocol, broadcast_truth. It didn't email the FBI. FBI agents can be confused. They can be slow. It didn't email the New York Times. Reporters need to verify sources. The Bloodhound went to the Bitcoin blockchain itself. It initiated a new transaction. It was a op_return transaction, a special type of Bitcoin transfer that allows you to embed a small amount of text data directly into the blockchain. You can't fit a PDF in an op_return. But you can fit a URL. And a decryption key. The script uploaded the full evidence dossier to the Interplanetary File System, IPFS, a decentralized, uncensorable web. Then, it etched the link into the immutable ledger of Bitcoin block number 840,122. Message, the IronGate theft was an inside job. Proof, ifs. io/ifs/QMX. Decryption key, stole_is_a_liar. The transaction was broadcast. Miners in China picked it up. Miners in Texas picked it up. Within 10 minutes, the block was solved. The message was written into the history of the internet forever. It could never be deleted. It could never be redacted. I opened my eyes in the dark cell. I didn't know the exact second it happened. But I knew Adrian. And I knew that right now, wherever he was, his phone was about to start ringing. And this time, he wouldn't be able to spin his way out of it. The glass house. The internet does not have a center. It is a sprawling, chaotic nervous system that twitches at the speed of light. But if it did have a center, a place where the raw, unfiltered it of the financial world lives, it would be crypto Twitter. At 4:02 p.m., a bot account named @whale_watcher, which usually only tweets about large movements of currency, posted a strange alert. Alert, unusual op_return data detected in block number 840,122. Message, the IronGate theft was an inside job. Proof, ifs. io/. For 3 minutes, nobody noticed. It was just noise in the feed. Then, a user named @Satoshi_Hunter, 150k followers, clicked the link. He downloaded the file. A 500-page PDF simply titled the _autopsy. PDF. He opened it. He saw the first page. It was a summary of the dusting attack I had deployed years ago. It showed a visualization of the stolen funds, not as a number, but as a glowing green river of contaminated Bitcoin flowing out of the IronGate vault and into the labyrinth of the dark web. At 4:10 p.m., @Satoshi_Hunter tweeted. Holy s %T. Guys. Wake up. Kade didn't steal it. Stoll bought a yacht. He attached a screenshot of page 412, the purchase order for the S. Aurora, linking the cleaned Bitcoin directly to Adrian Stoll's shell company. The tweet went viral instantly. It hit Reddit's r/cryptocurrency. It hit 4chan. It hit the Discord servers. By 4:30 p.m., the hashtag stole yacht was trending higher than the President of the United States. The lawyer. Elena Russo was sleeping at her desk in the public defender's office when her phone vibrated off the table and hit the floor. She groaned, picking it up. It was her junior paralegal, David. David, I told you, I'm taking a nap. I've been reading bankruptcy filings for 6 hours. Turn on the TV, Elena, David screamed. Turn on anything. Twitter. The news. Are you looking at the client's file? I'm looking at the back of my eyelids. Lucas Kade just dumped the receipts, David said breathlessly. Or someone did. There's a dossier floating around. It traces the money, Elena. All of it. Elena sat up. She wiped the sleep from her eyes and clicked her mouse. She went to Twitter. The first thing she saw was a meme of Adrian Stoll wearing a pirate hat on a sinking ship labeled S. Aurora. The second thing she saw was a link to the dossier. She clicked it. She didn't understand the technical jargon about UXOs or dusting, but she understood the bank records. Page 450, wire transfer authorization. Origin, Neptune Holdings, Cayman Islands. Beneficiary, Bank of Georgetown, Lucas Kade, account fraudulent. Date, August 14th. Signatory, A. Stoll. There it was. The smoking gun I had told her to look for, the signature. Oh my God, Elena whispered. She grabbed her coat. She grabbed her briefcase. David, call the U.S. Attorney's office, she shouted into the phone. Tell them to get a judge on the line. I'm heading to the MDC. The FBI field office. Special Agent Miller was having a very bad afternoon. He was standing in the middle of the cyber war room, surrounded by 20 technicians who were frantically typing. The mood was panic. How did we miss this? Miller barked. We have the drives. We have the keys. The drives are garbage, sir, the lead forensics examiner said, not looking up. We finally brute forced the partition 10 minutes ago. It's full of cat videos. Cat videos? It's random data, sir. Junk. It was just weighted to feel heavy. And the encryption key. It wasn't complex. It was password 123. Miller felt the blood drain from his face. He played us, Miller whispered. He handed us a toy and we held a press conference. Sir, another agent called out from the monitor wall. The blockchain analysis coming from the public sector. It's verifying. The dossier is real. We traced the yacht purchase ourselves just now using the subpoenaed bank records from the dossier. The shell company is registered to Adrian Stoll. Miller looked at the screen. He saw the headline on CNN, Internet sleuths crack IronGate case, CEO accused. He had arrested the wrong man. And he had done it on national television. He picked up his phone. He dialed the director. Sir, Miller said, his voice shaking. We need to get to the marina. Now. The cell. In the SHU, you don't get news. You get vibes. The vibe had changed. For the last 2 days, the guards had been aggressive. They banged on the doors. They shouted orders. Now, it was quiet. Too quiet. I sat on my bunk, waiting. I heard footsteps. Fast, heavy footsteps. Not the usual shuffle of the patrol. Key in the lock. Clack thud. The door swung open. It wasn't Griggs. It was the warden himself, flanked by 2 lieutenants. Kade, the warden said. He looked uncomfortable. Get up. Put your shoes on. Am I being moved, warden? I asked, sliding my feet into the canvas shoes. We're moving you to protective custody, the warden said. Unit 9. Individual isolation, but with amenities. Why? Because if I leave you here, the warden said, someone is going to try to kill you. And right now, you are the most famous man in America. Did something happen on the news? I asked innocently. The warden looked at me. He knew I knew. Don't play dumb, Kade. Your little computer program just set the world on fire. There are news helicopters circling the prison. There are protesters outside the gates chanting your name. Chanting my name? They're calling you the Oracle, the warden spat. Come on. Lawyers waiting. The meeting. They brought me to a different room this time. Not the plexiglass booth. A proper conference room with a table and chairs. Elena was there. She was pacing. She looked like she had just run a marathon and won. When I walked in, she didn't sit down. She looked at me, then she laughed. A loud, incredulous laugh. You crazy son of a bitch, she said. You actually did it. Did what? I sat down. You proved it, she said, throwing the printout of the dossier on the table. The yacht. The dust. The fake account. It's all here. The U.S. attorney just called me. They are dropping the charges. Dropping them? Dismissing with prejudice, she said, grinning. They are embarrassed, Lucas. They are mortified. Miller looks like an idiot. They want this to go away as fast as possible. You're walking out of here tonight. I looked at the dossier. It was thick. The Bloodhound had been thorough. And Adrian? I asked. Elena's smile faded slightly. She turned on the TV in the corner of the room. Watch. The screen showed an aerial shot of a marina in New York Harbor. A massive, sleek super-yacht, the S. Aurora was pulling away from the dock. But it wasn't going to open sea. It was surrounded. Coast Guard cutters were blocking the harbor mouth. NYPD harbor units were flanking the yacht. A police helicopter was hovering low, its spotlight trained on the bridge. The Chiron read, standoff at sea, IronGate CEO attempts to flee. He tried to run, Elena said. The moment the dossier dropped, he sprinted for the boat. He thought he could get to international waters. He forgot that yachts are slow, I said. And he forgot that the Coast Guard has guns, Elena added. On the screen, we saw figures boarding the yacht. Tiny black dots swarming the white deck. We saw a figure in a white suit being led away in handcuffs. Adrian Stoll. The man who wanted to be a king. Now just another prisoner. I felt. Nothing. No joy. No triumph, just the heavy exhaustion of a man who had held his breath for 3 days. So it's over, I said. It's over, Elena agreed. The bankruptcy trustee will use your dossier to claw back the assets. The investors will get something back. Maybe not everything, but something. She sat down opposite me. You know, Lucas, she said quietly. You committed a crime too. Did I? Unauthorized access to a computer system. Deploying a surveillance script without consent. Technically, the Bloodhound was illegal. I was the custodian, I said. My job was to secure the assets. I installed a security feature. It just happened to have a delayed activation. Elena smiled. That's exactly what I told the U.S. attorney. They agreed not to press charges on the hacking statute, provided you delete the source code. It deleted itself, I lied. It was a one-time execution. Good. She closed her briefcase. Get your stuff, Lucas. You're a free man. The exit. Walking out of the MDC was different than walking in. There were no cuffs. I was wearing my own suit, which they had returned to me in a plastic bag. It was wrinkled, but it felt like armor. I walked out the front gate. It was night. The air was cool and smelled of city grit. The crowd was massive. Reporters, crypto enthusiasts, curious onlookers. When they saw me, a roar went up. Not of anger, but of validation. Kade. 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 I didn't stop. I didn't give an interview. I didn't acknowledge them. I saw a black sedan waiting at the curb. Elena opened the back door. Where to? She asked. The server farm, I said. I have one last thing to check. Lucas, she warned. Don't push your luck. Just kidding, I said. Take me to a diner. I want a burger. And I want to pay with cash. I got into the car. As we drove away, I looked back at the prison. It was a monolith of concrete and misery. Adrian would be there soon. He would get my cell. He would get Griggs. I pulled my phone out of my pocket, my real phone, which Elena had retrieved from evidence. I opened my secure browser. I checked the IPFS link one last time. The dossier was there. The truth was immutable. The blockchain doesn't care if you are a CEO or a custodian. It doesn't care about your narrative. It only cares about the math. And the math had finally balanced the immutable record. 3 months later. The Federal Correctional Institution, FCI, in Otisville, New York, is considered a gentleman's prison. It is where Wall Street bankers, corrupt politicians, and disgraced CEOs go to wait out their 5 to 10 year sentences. It has a tennis court. It has a library. It has a view of the woods. But it is still a cage. I sat in the visitation room. It was brighter than the one at the MDC. The tables were white laminate, not bolted steel. The air smelled of floor wax and cheap coffee. I adjusted my tie. I wasn't wearing an orange jumpsuit anymore. I was wearing a bespoke charcoal suit. On my wrist was a watch that cost more than my old annual salary, a signing bonus for my new contract. The door on the far side of the room opened. Adrian Stoll walked in. He looked different. The crisis CEO persona was gone. The mastermind persona was gone. He looked smaller. His hair, usually dyed a rich chestnut, was showing gray at the roots. His prison khaki uniform was pressed, but it hung loosely on his frame. He sat down opposite me. He didn't smile. Hello, Adrian, I said. Lucas, he replied. His voice was raspy. You look expensive. I'm a consultant now, I said. The bankruptcy trustee hired me to oversee the asset recovery. It turns out, I'm the only one who knows how the system works. Adrian leaned back in his chair. You're recovering my money. I'm recovering the depositor's money, I corrected. We're at 85 cents on the dollar. It's a miracle, really. Most bankruptcies yield 10 cents. But the dossier I released. It made it very hard for your shell companies to hide. Adrian stared at me. His eyes were cold, calculating. He wasn't broken. Not yet. He was still looking for an angle. You didn't come here to brag, Adrian said. You came here because you're missing something. I raised an eyebrow. Am I? You found the yacht, Adrian whispered, leaning in. You found the villas in Como. You found the accounts in Singapore. But you and I both know the math doesn't add up. He tapped the table with his index finger. There's still $500 million missing, Lucas. The emergency fund. The cash I pulled out in Monero before I bought the yacht. I stayed silent. You can't trace Monero, Adrian said, a hint of his old arrogance returning. The Bloodhound can't sniff it. It's a black hole. That money is gone. Unless I give you the seed phrase, Adrian said. It's memorized. It's in my head. No one else has it. He looked around the room to make sure the guards weren't listening. Here's the deal. I give you the seed. You recover the funds. You keep 10% as a consulting fee. That's $50 million, tax-free. You put the rest in the recovery pot. The trustee looks like a hero. You look like a god. And in exchange, you testify at my sentencing hearing. Testify to what? That I cooperated, Adrian said. That I voluntarily surrendered the last of the assets. It knocks 5 years off my sentence. Maybe I get out in 3. He smiled. It was the shark smile. The smile that had convinced investors to give him billions. It's a win-win, Lucas. You get rich. The victims get paid. I get my life back. I looked at him for a long moment. I felt a profound sense of pity. He still didn't understand. He thought we were playing poker. He thought he had an ace up his sleeve. He didn't realize we were playing chess, and he had been checkmated 10 moves ago. I reached into my breast pocket. I pulled out a folded piece of paper. I slid it across the table. "What is this?" Adrian asked. "Open it." Adrian unfolded the paper. It was a printout of a blockchain transaction. His eyes scanned the lines. He stopped. His face went pale. This is impossible," he whispered. "Monero is private," I said calmly. "That is true. The transaction amounts and the sender addresses are hidden by ring signatures. It is mathematically opaque." I leaned forward. "But Monero doesn't exist in a vacuum, Adrian. To buy Monero, you have to sell Bitcoin. And to sell Bitcoin, you have to use an exchange. Or an OTC desk." I pointed to the paper. "You used a Russian OTC desk called Black River to swap the Bitcoin for Monero. You thought they were discreet. You thought they didn't keep logs." Adrian's hands started to shake. "I bought Black River's server logs," I said. "Well, the trustee did. We bought the data from a disgruntled admin in St. Petersburg. It cost us $50,000. A bargain, really." I tapped the paper. "We matched your Bitcoin exit timestamps to the Monero entry timestamps. We correlated the amounts. And because you are a creature of habit, Adrian, you used the same password for the Monero wallet as you did for your corporate email." I watched the hope drain out of him. It was like watching a balloon deflate. "We recovered the $500 million yesterday," I said. "It's already in the trustee's custody. The victims are getting 98 cents on the dollar." Adrian dropped the paper. He looked at his hands. "So I have nothing," he whispered. "I have no leverage." "You have nothing," I agreed. "You are going to trial next month. And you are going to lose. You won't get 3 years, Adrian. You'll get 20. You'll be an old man when you walk out of here." I stood up. "Why?" Adrian asked, his voice cracking. "Why did you come here? If you already had the money, why visit me?" I looked down at him. "Because I wanted to tell you one thing," I said. "You spent 5 years telling everyone that code is law. You put it on t-shirts. You put it on the company manifesto." I buttoned my jacket. "You forgot the other part of that philosophy. The blockchain is an immutable record. It remembers everything. It remembers the theft. It remembers the yacht. And it remembers the lies." I turned to the door. "The code didn't betray you, Adrian. You betrayed the code. And the code always balances the ledger." I walked out of the visitation room. I walked through the metal detectors. I walked out into the crisp New York afternoon. A black sedan was waiting for me. Elena Russo was in the driver's seat. She had quit the public defender's office. She was now the general counsel for my new firm. "How did it go?" she asked as I got in. "He tried to sell me a bridge," I said. "Did you buy it?" "I already own the bridge," I said. We drove away. I pulled out my phone. I opened the terminal app connected to the new cold storage vault I had built for the trustee. Balance, $3,200,000,000.000.00 status, secure. I typed a command. /bloodhound_v1.sh delete. Confirm deletion? Y/n. I hesitated. The script had been my guardian. It had saved my life. But it was a weapon. And weapons don't belong in a bank. I typed Y. Deleting. Deletion complete. I locked the phone. I looked out the window at the passing trees. The ledger was clean. The debt was paid. And for the first time in 5 years, the silence in my head wasn't heavy. It was just peace. The dead echo. 1 week after the prison visit. Freedom is a strange thing. When you don't have it, it's all you think about. When you have it, you realize it's just a lot of empty space that you have to fill. I was living in a temporary apartment in Tribeca, a corporate housing unit provided by the bankruptcy trustee. It was glass, steel, and expensive beige furniture. It had a view of the Hudson River. I was technically a hero. The recovered funds were being distributed. The victims were getting their money back. I had been interviewed by Wired and the Wall Street Journal. They called me the White Hat of Wall Street. But I didn't feel like a hero. I felt like a man looking over his shoulder. I sat at my desk, staring at my laptop. It was a brand new MacBook, purchased with cash, hardened with XOS. I checked my secure email. Inbox, 0. I had deleted the Bloodhound script 7 days ago. I had scrubbed the servers. I had wiped the logs. The weapon was gone. Or so I thought. At 11:42 p.m., a notification popped up on my encrypted messenger, Signal. Unknown sender. Message type, image. I hesitated. Opening files from unknown senders is security 101, don't do it. But the preview showed a string of text that made my blood run cold. It was a line of code. If, biometric_handshake == false, execute _protocol Bloodhound. I clicked the message. It was a screenshot. A screenshot of my code. The original source code for the Bloodhound script. I stared at it. I had written that code on an air-gapped machine 3 years ago. I had deployed it to a secure, encrypted container. I had deleted it last week. No one else had ever seen the source code. Not Adrian. Not the FBI. Not Elena. Then a second message arrived. Sender, ghost message, you deleted the gun, Lucas. But you forgot about the bullets. I typed back. Me, who is this? Ghost, we have the repository. We have the back door. And we know you didn't write this alone. I frowned. I did write it alone. Every line. Every semicolon. Me, I don't know what you're talking about. The script is gone. Ghost, the script is gone. The logic remains. We want the key, Lucas. The real one. Me, there is no other key. The money is recovered. Ghost, not the money. The master key to the IronGate kernel. The one you used to bypass the HSM security in the first place to install the script. You didn't just write a script, Lucas. You cracked the hardware. I froze. They were right. To install the Bloodhound deep enough into the system so that Adrian couldn't find it, I had to find a zero-day exploit in the hardware security module, HSM. I had found a vulnerability in the firmware of the drive itself. I never told anyone about that exploit. If that vulnerability became public, every HSM from that manufacturer, used by banks, governments, and exchanges around the world, would be compromised. I had kept it a secret. I called it the skeleton key. Ghost, we want the exploit, Lucas. You have 24 hours. Or we release the source code of your little script to the Russian forums. And once they see how you bypass the HSM, they will reverse engineer the skeleton key themselves. Ghost, meet us. The High Line. 10th Avenue entrance. Midnight tomorrow. Come alone. Or the global banking system melts down. The chat disappeared. Self-destructed. I sat back in my chair. The beige apartment suddenly felt very small. I thought the war was over. I thought I had defeated the dragon and gone home. But in the world of cybersecurity, there is no game over. There is only level 2. I picked up my phone. I dialed Elena. Lucas? She answered, sounding sleepy. It's midnight. Are you okay? We have a problem, I said. What kind of problem? Legal? Technical, I said. And maybe existential. Remember how I told you I deleted the weapon? Yes. I deleted the weapon, I said, looking out at the dark river. But I think someone found the blueprints. Who? I don't know. But they know things only I should know. Elena. I need you to hire a private security detail. Tonight. Why? Lucas, you're scaring me. Because Adrian was just a greedy thief, I said, standing up and closing the blinds. This is something else. This feels like a state actor. I hung up. I went to the closet. I pulled out my Go Bag, a bag I had packed 3 years ago and hoped never to use. It contained a burner laptop, $20,000 in cash, and a passport. I unzipped the hidden lining of the bag. Inside was a small, silver USB drive. It wasn't the Bloodhound. It was the skeleton key. The firmware exploit. I held it in my hand. It was worth billions to the right people. It could unlock half the cold storage vaults in the world. I had kept it as an insurance policy. Now, it was a target. I put the drive in my pocket. I walked to the kitchen. I turned on the gas stove. I held the paper with the signal messages over the flame until it turned to ash. The game had changed. I wasn't the hunter anymore. I was the prey, the 0-day. Midnight. The High Line. The High Line is a miracle of urban planning, a 1.4-mile-long public park built on a historic freight rail line elevated above the streets of Manhattan's West Side. By day, it is a river of tourists, selfie sticks, and overpriced gelato. By night, it is a narrow, concrete canyon suspended 30 feet in the air. I entered at 14th Street. The wind was whipping off the Hudson, cutting through my jacket. I wasn't wearing my bespoke suit anymore. I was wearing dark jeans, a black hoodie, and a pair of running shoes I had bought with cash at a Foot Locker an hour ago. In my pocket was the skeleton key. Or at least, a silver USB drive that looked like it. I walked north. The park was empty, save for the occasional security guard who was more interested in his phone than the shadows. The plants, wild grasses and birch trees, rustled in the wind, sounding like dry whispers. I checked my phone. My burner phone. A cheap Android prepaid I had picked up at a bodega. Ghost, keep walking. 10th Avenue Square. Sit on the wooden steps. I kept walking. I knew the layout of the High Line. It's a fatal funnel. If they blocked the exits at 23rd and 30th Streets, I was trapped. There was no way down except to jump 30 feet onto the pavement. I reached the 10th Avenue Square, a sunken amphitheater where the park crosses over the avenue, with a large glass window looking down at the traffic below. I sat on the wooden steps. I watched the yellow taxi streak by underneath me. Lucas, a voice said. I didn't turn around immediately. I let the adrenaline spike, then settle. I turned. Standing 10 feet away was a woman. She wasn't wearing a trench coat or sunglasses. She looked like a tech CEO on a coffee run. Expensive wool coat, scarf, leather boots. She held a phone in one hand and nothing in the other. You came alone, she said. Her accent was faint. Eastern European? Israeli? Hard to place. As requested, I said. Your Ghost? I am a proxy, she said, stepping closer. Ghost is an organization. You can call me Lena. She sat down on the bench opposite me. She didn't check for wires. She didn't look nervous. She looked bored. The drive, she said, extending a gloved hand. Not yet, I said. I want to know who I'm selling to. This isn't a script, Lena. This is a weapon. If I give you this exploit, you can drain the Federal Reserve. You can drain the SWIFT network. Lena smiled. It was a cold, practiced expression. You think too small, Lucas. We don't want money. We have money. We want access. She leaned forward. We represent a consortium of state actors who are tired of the U.S. dollar's hegemony. We don't want to steal the money. We want to freeze it. We want to demonstrate that the Western banking system is compromised. We want to shatter confidence. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the wind. This wasn't a criminal gang. This was cyber warfare. If I give you this key, I said, you'll brick the HSMs of every major bank in New York. Exactly, she said. And you will be the man who made it possible. A hero to the decentralized world. And if I refuse? Lena tapped her phone. Then Elena Russo dies. Tonight. She is currently sleeping in her apartment on the Upper West Side. We have a team in the lobby. She showed me a live video feed on her phone. It was a grainy, night vision shot of Elena's apartment door. Give me the drive, Lucas. Go back to your life. We will patch the vulnerability after we use it once. No one will know it was you. I reached into my pocket. My fingers brushed the cold metal of the USB drive. I had anticipated this. I knew they would threaten Elena. I knew they would have leverage. So I had brought my own. I have the drive, I said, pulling it out. But it's encrypted. We expected that, Lena said. Give us the password. The password is 64 characters long, I said. I'm not going to recite it. And I'm not going to text it. I held the drive up. The silver casing glinted in the city lights. This drive contains a partition. Inside is the exploit. But there is a second partition. A poison pill. Lena's expression didn't change. Go on. If you try to brute force this drive, or if you plug it into a forensic deck without the correct handshake, it executes a script. Not the Bloodhound. Something much simpler. I paused. It emails the vulnerability report directly to the HSM manufacturer. It emails the NSA. It emails CISA. It publishes the exploit on GitHub. Lena stopped smiling. You're bluffing, she said. You wouldn't burn the asset. The asset is my life insurance, I said. If that exploit goes public, the manufacturer patches it in 24 hours. The weapon becomes useless. And you lose your geopolitical advantage. I stood up. Here is the deal, Lena. I give you the drive. You call off the team at Elena's apartment. I verify she is safe. Then, and only then, do I send you the first half of the password. I disappear. In 24 hours, if I am still alive, I send you the second half. Lena stared at me. She was calculating the risk. She was assessing whether I was the type of man who would burn a billion-dollar weapon just to spite her. She tapped her earpiece. She spoke in a language I didn't recognize. Stand down, she said. Hold position. She looked at me. The team is holding. Give me the drive. I tossed the USB stick. It arced through the air. She caught it. She pulled a small tablet from her coat. She plugged the drive in. Careful, I warned. One wrong attempt and it phones home. She paused. She looked at the screen. It prompted for a password. It's valid, she said. Send the team away, I said. I want to see them leave the building on the feed. She tapped her phone. On the screen, I saw the two shadowy figures retreat down the hallway of Elena's building. They are gone, Lena said. First half of the password. The first 32 characters are 0_trust_is_a_myth_1_you_. She typed it in. The prompt accepted the input length but waited for the rest. The rest? She asked. Tomorrow, I said. At noon. If I'm alive. Lena pocketed the drive. She stood up. You are playing a dangerous game, Lucas. If you don't send that code, we won't just kill Elena. We will find you. And we will make it slow. I know, I said. She turned and walked away, heading south toward the 14th Street exit. I waited until she was out of sight. Then I ran. I didn't run south. I ran north. I sprinted toward the 30th Street exit. My breath tore at my throat. I vaulted over a bench. I checked my burner phone. 12:15 a.m. I had bought myself 12 hours. But Lena was wrong about one thing. I wasn't playing a game. The drive I gave her was encrypted. But the password wasn't split in half. The password didn't exist. The drive contained nothing but random binary noise. There was no exploit on it. There was no poison pill. It was a paperweight. The real skeleton key, the actual code, was sitting in a drafts folder of a Gmail account I had created 5 minutes ago. I needed to get to a computer. I needed to do the one thing that guarantees safety in the information age. I wasn't going to sell the 0-day. I wasn't going to use it. I was going to patch it. I was going to email the manufacturer. I was going to tell them everything. I was going to kill the weapon myself. Because if the weapon doesn't exist, then Ghost has no reason to hunt me. I reached the 30th Street exit. I ran down the stairs. I hit the pavement of 10th Avenue. I hailed a cab. Where to? The driver asked. JFK, I said. International Terminal. I wasn't running away. I was going to the only place where international jurisdiction gets blurry. I was going to meet the manufacturer. In Zurich. I looked out the rear window. The High Line was a dark scar against the sky. The cold wallet was empty. The Bloodhound was dead. Now, I just had to survive the 0-day, the kill switch. Zurich, Switzerland. Switzerland smells of money. Not the dirty, diesel-fumed money of New York, but clean, old, quiet money. It smells of cold lake air and chocolate. I landed at Zurich Airport at 10 a.m. local time. I hadn't slept on the 7-hour flight. I had spent the entire time staring at the flight map on the screen in front of me, watching the little plane icon inch across the Atlantic, waiting for the Wi-Fi to cut out, waiting for a tap on the shoulder. It never came. I cleared customs using my passport. It was risky, Ghost likely had flags on my identity, but I was betting on the bureaucracy of the surveillance state. It takes time to propagate a capture order from a shadow organization to a Swiss border guard. I had about 2 hours before Lena realized the USB drive I gave her was junk. 2 hours before the password deadline expired. I took a train from the airport to the city center. I didn't go to a hotel. I didn't go to a bank. I went to an industrial park on the outskirts of the city, to a building that looked like a jagged block of obsidian dropped into a green field. Genesis Security Systems. They were the manufacturers of the Hardware Security Module, HSM, used by IronGate. They built the vaults for half the central banks in the world. They were the locksmiths of the digital age. And I was about to tell them their lock was broken. The meeting. The lobby was sterile white. The receptionist sat behind bulletproof glass. I need to speak to the CTO, I said. Dr. Weber. The receptionist looked at me. I looked like a wreck. Jeans, hoodie, red eyes. Dr. Weber does not take walk-ins, she said politely. Do you have an appointment? Tell him Lucas Kade is here, I said. Tell him I have the skeleton key. She paused. The name Lucas Kade meant something in the crypto world now. But skeleton key meant something else entirely to a hardware manufacturer. It was a myth. A ghost story engineers told each other. She picked up the phone. She spoke in hushed German. 2 minutes later, the heavy security doors buzzed open. A man in a gray suit walked out. He wasn't Dr. Weber. He was clearly head of security. He was built like a mountain and had an earpiece. Mr. Kade, he said. Come with me. They didn't take me to an office. They took me to a SIF, a sensitive compartmented information facility. No electronics allowed. Dr. Weber was waiting inside. He was a small man with wire-rimmed glasses and the intense stare of a mathematician. You have 5 minutes, Weber said. You are currently the most notorious hacker in the world. The only reason I haven't called Interpol is because I'm curious. I didn't hack your drive, I said, sitting down. I found a flaw in the firmware's random number generator. It allows for a side-channel attack during the boot sequence. Weber scoffed. Impossible. We use a quantum-resistant entropy source. You use a quantum source for the keys, I corrected. But the bootloader handshake uses a standard pseudorandom generator based on the system clock. If you freeze the clock, you can inject code. I pulled a folded piece of paper from my pocket. It wasn't a USB drive. It was a printout of 20 lines of assembly code. I slid it across the table. This is the exploit, I said. I used it to install the Bloodhound script on the IronGate drive. It gives you root access to the HSM. Weber picked up the paper. He read it. His face went pale. He stopped breathing for a moment. He pulled a pen from his pocket and scribbled a calculation on the margin. Main God, he whispered. He looked up at me. The arrogance was gone. It was replaced by terror. If this gets out, Weber said, every Genesis HSM is vulnerable. The banking system. It would be catastrophic. I know, I said. That's why I'm here. How much? Weber asked. How much do you want? 10 million? 20? I don't want money, I said. I have money. I want a patch. A patch? I want you to push a critical firmware update. Today. Now. I want you to close the hole. Weber stared at me. A global firmware update takes weeks to test. If we brick the devices. If you don't patch it today, I interrupted, Ghost will have it tomorrow. Ghost? A state-sponsored group. They cornered me in New York. They have a copy of the encrypted drive, but they don't have the password. Yet. They are going to brute force it, or they are going to kill me to get it. If you patch this vulnerability, the weapon becomes useless. And I stay alive. Weber looked at the paper again. You are asking us to admit a critical failure, he said. Our stock will crash. Your stock will crash if I post this on GitHub, I said. Or you can issue a mandatory security upgrade for performance enhancements. You don't have to admit the flaw. Just fix it. I looked at the clock on the wall, 11:45 a.m. You have 15 minutes, doctor. Before I have to send a password to people who kill for a living. Weber stood up. He looked at his head of security. Get the engineering team, Weber said. Code red. The burn. I sat in the Genesis cafeteria, drinking an espresso. I watched the clock. 12 p.m. My phone buzzed. It was my burner. Ghost, time is up, Lucas. Send the second half. I typed back. Me, check the Genesis status page. I didn't hit send yet. I waited. At 12:05 p.m., a notification popped up on the monitor in the cafeteria. It was a global alert from Genesis Security. Critical firmware update, v5.0.1. Severity, critical. Action, immediate installation required. Patch notes, security hardening of bootloader sequence. Weber had done it. He had pushed the update to the global network. Every connected HSM would download it automatically. Every offline HSM would require it before signing the next transaction. The exploit was dead. The hole was closed. I looked at my phone. I hit send. Me, check the Genesis status page. The exploit is patched. The key is worthless. I waited. The dots bubbled. Ghost, you burned the asset. Me, I disarmed the bomb. You have no leverage. If you kill me now, it's just murder. No profit. No access. Just a mess. There was a long pause. In the world of espionage, revenge is a luxury. Professionals don't kill for spite, they kill for utility. I had just removed my own utility. I was no longer a high-value target. I was just a guy in a hoodie. Ghost, unfortunate. You would have been a useful asset. Ghost, goodbye, Lucas. The chat disconnected. The burner number dissolved. I let out a breath. My hands were shaking. Dr. Weber walked into the cafeteria. He looked exhausted. It is done, he said. The network is patching. We are seeing 80% adoption already. He sat down opposite me. You could have sold that for $50 million, he said. Why give it away? I didn't want to look over my shoulder for the rest of my life, I said. And besides, I prefer open source. Weber smiled weakly. We will wire a bug bounty to your account. Standard procedure. It is. Substantial. Donate it, I said. To the Electronic Frontier Foundation. I stood up. Am I free to go? You are, Weber said. But Lucas? Yes? Don't find any more bugs in my hardware. My heart can't take it. Build better hardware, I said. The lake. I walked out of the building. The Swiss air was crisp and cold. I took the train down to Lake Zurich. I sat on a bench by the water, watching the swans drift by. The Alps were visible in the distance, jagged and white against the blue sky. I pulled the burner phone out of my pocket. I removed the SIM card. I snapped it in half. I threw the phone into the deep water. It sank with a tiny splash. I was ghostless. I was keyless. I was just Lucas Kade again. My real phone buzzed. It was Elena. Lucas, she said. Where are you? The security team at my apartment said the guys in the lobby just left. They got a call and walked out. I know, I said. It's resolved. How? What did you do? I fixed the lock, I said. You're speaking in riddles. I'm in Zurich, Elena. I'm going to stay here for a while. The skiing is supposed to be good. Zurich? She laughed. You don't ski. I can learn, I said. I have time now. So you're retired? I think so. The crypto world is too loud. I need something analog. Well, Elena said. Just don't disappear completely. I still have to bill you for the legal work. Send it to the trustee, I said. I'm off the clock. I hung up. I looked at the lake. The water was clear. You could see the stones at the bottom. Adrian Stoll was in a cell. The money was returned. The back door was closed. I reached into my pocket and felt the empty space where the USB drive used to be. The cold wallet was finally truly cold. I stood up, adjusted my jacket against the wind, and walked toward the city. For the first time in 5 years, I didn't have a secret to keep. And that was the most valuable asset of all.